Sheila Johnson said, hey, if everybody's going to milk this Caitlin Clark thing and get paid off of her appearing in their state, might as well be me too. Salute to you.
Remember when everyone said no one wanted to play with Caitlin Clark? Well, Lexie Brown just blew that narrative to pieces. of Seattle's Storm Guard, who once had her own doubts about Clark, is now her biggest offender in the WNBA. What changed? Brown actually played against her. She saw firsthand what Clark brings to the court. And now she's calling out everyone who pushed that fake story, including Cheryl Swoops, who claimed no one wanted to. Go to Indiana.
And I hope we spend so much less time discussing nonsense and, fan bases and all the things that came along with it, and the made up garbage that was online and was sold as if it was a big part of the actual sport or the
Funny how quickly that's being proven wrong, isn't it? Remember when Lexie Brown wasn't exactly Team Caitlin Clark. She was part of that crowd that had their doubts about the rookie Phenom Brown. Wasn't hiding it either. She openly questioned whether Clark's hype was manufactured by the media or she was actually the real deal. You know how it goes in professional sports. Veterans are often skeptical of college stars until they prove themselves at the next level, and Clark faced more scrutiny than most.
All right, so a little backstory about Lexie Brown. Basically was one of the players that used to not really like Caitlin Clark like that, or didn't really necessarily believe in her talents until she played.
But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. Brown's opinion didn't slowly evolve over a season or even a few games. It changed dramatically after just one game against Clark. Think about that for a second. Just one game was all it took for a seasoned WNBA veteran to completely flip her stance after sharing the court with the rookie Brown. Didn't mince words. Oh, damn. She is legit, Brown admitted, clearly caught off guard by what she just witnessed.
She was a player who played for the Sparks, and she was somebody who, prior to Caitlin Clark coming into the WNBA, was very, I'm not going to say anti-Caitlin, but did not believe that.
What makes this so powerful isn't just that Brown changed her mind, it's the immediacy of her transformation. There was no gradual warming up to Clark, no relevant admission. Weeks later, the change was instant. One day, she's questioning the hype. The next, she's telling everyone Clark is the real deal. This wasn't some calculated PR move. This was raw, genuine reaction from someone who just had their preconceptions completely shattered.
Well, she did probably say things that were wrong at the time, but she definitely did not believe the hype. And the one thing why I like Lexie Brown is it took one game for Lexie Brown to realize, oh, damn, she is the scouting report. No, Caitlin Clark is legit. It's fine.
Let's be real feel about something here. The WNBA has no shortage of veterans who've doubled down on their criticism of Clark, refusing to acknowledge what they're seeing right in front of them. Some players digging their heels, unwilling to admit they might have been wrong about the rookie. But not Brown. She had the integrity to publicly acknowledge her initial assessment was way off. That kind of honesty is refreshingly rare in professional sport.
Man, she became one of the most vocal players about Caitlin Clark, really got on the positive side or positive end about her, gave her nothing but praise, and really was speaking against a lot of the nonsense that was going on with Caitlin Clark, especially with the Mystics CEO or Mystics owner, the only one that called out that nonsense.
And if you think about it, this is exactly why Brown's defense of Clark carries so much weight. She's been on both sides of the fence. She knows what it's like to question the hype, and she knows what it's like to have those questions obliterated by witnessing Clark's talent firsthand. She's not speaking from assumptions or watching highlights on social media. She's speaking from direct experience against one of the most scrutinized rookies in WNBA history.
That's one of the things where it's why I don't have anything as Diana Taurasi, where it's you can be wrong about a player, but then if you're proven to be wrong, don't stay wrong.
Don't stay wrong. So what exactly did Brown see on that court that changed her mind so dramatically? What did Clark show her that so many others are still refusing to acknowledge? The transformation wasn't just about acknowledging Clark's shooting or passing skills. It was a complete recognition of her as a generational talent, someone whose impact on the court goes beyond statistics.
And I really look at Lexie Brown as one of the special pieces in the WNBA. Man, I just really love what she's doing for the league and for Caitlin Clark as far as speaking out on the nonsense and really holding people accountable for what they're saying. She's a pioneer of the real movement.
While Brown recognized Clark's generational talent on the court, Cheryl Swoops was busy spreading one of the most our lies in WNBA history, that nobody wants to play with Caitlin Clark. This ridiculous claim spread like wildfire despite making absolutely zero basketball sense. But have you ever stopped to wonder who actually started this nonsense and why so many people ran with it?
That's not my point. There's a lot of other shit going on that players are like, this ain't where I want to be.
Over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some new shit going on around there.
It's a lot. So you have players that are very significant on this Indiana Fever team that are like, I don't
want to be here.
This is where I want to be.
Let's put this in perspective. Sheryl Swoopes, yes, that Sheryl Swoopes, one of the biggest names in women's basketball history, went on record stating that players wouldn't want to go to Indiana. Because of Clark, she literally claimed nobody wanted to go there with her. Think about that for a second. A WNBA legend suggesting free agents would avoid playing with one of the most electric passers and scorers the league has ever seen. Does that make any sense to you?
Playoffs, but I also know players on that team that are like, oh hell no, we don't want to just be here.
Yeah.
Because then when you
about to say that.
Because then when you factor in free agency, you got players on this Indiana Fever team.
They getting paid anyway?
That are like, no, but players who will be free agents.
This is where Lexie Brown didn't just offend Clark, she took a blowtorch to this absurd narrative. And what makes this so significant, Brown appears on the same podcast network as Swoopes Gill's Arena. She was essentially calling out her own colleague risking professional relationships to stand up to the truth that takes serious courage in a league where veterans' opinions typically go unchallenged.
But you got to think, if you have the opportunity, like even if Indiana needed a center, they're not overlooking Caitlin Clark. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like, you got to, if it depends on if it's a generational type of talent or if it's like, if you can sacrifice that for something that can help you right now, I think it makes sense to sacrifice that. It just depends on the needs of the team.
Exactly.
But there are some players who surpass needs of the team.
No, yeah, and she was one of them.
Brown wasn't subtle about it either. She completely dismantled the argument with surgical precision, calling out these Twitter fingers critics who were spreading lies without any actual basketball knowledge. Why would you not want to play with somebody like that? Let's not be dumb here, Brown stated, cutting straight to the heart of the issue. Like, seriously, what player wouldn't want to receive passes from one of the most creative playmakers in basketball?
And I think that they made the right call on that because they knew her play would attract better players to Indiana. Like, it's been hard for them to get players to sign to Indiana because they're in Indiana. And because those games typically were very empty. There was no energy behind the Fever since they won their championships when Tamika Catchings was there.
But Brown didn't stop there. She specifically pointed out that these rumors weren't coming from actual WNBA players, but from people who couldn't even be the manager for the JV basketball team. That a brutal takedown that exposed exactly who was pushing this narrative keyboard warriors with no real basketball credentials.
The entire franchise. And now it's an attractive place for free agents to come. And I think that long term, they were thinking about that. I don't know what other people were thinking of, no one was going to go there with her and they're not going to want to play with someone like that. But, like, why would you not want to play with somebody like that? Like,
that don't make no sense.
Let's not be dumb here. Like, we're all basketball players at the end of the day. I want to win.
This wasn't just about defending a rookie phenom. This was Brown challenging the entire power structure of WNBA media and veteran players who seemed determined to tear down Clark, who has already done so much for the league. Brown stood alone against an army of doubters who were busy spreading lies instead of celebrating new talent entering the league.
Those are people in the WNBA saying that. Those are Twitter fingers people saying that.
Twitter fingers.
Who didn't make the JV basketball team. They don't know.
They couldn't even be the manager for the JV basketball team.
The irony is just too perfect. A WNBA legend like Swoopes claiming nobody would want to play with Clark, while an actual current player is saying the complete opposite. It's the difference between speculation from the sidelines and truth from someone who's actually on the court. Brown didn't just correct the record. She completely flipped the script on one of the most powerful voices in women's basketball.
Which is the players in the league need to start holding each other accountable and not allowing nonsense to be spewed on these podcasts and not be challenged.
So the transformation of the Indiana Fever isn't just some small-scale makeover. It's a complete resurrection that perfectly validates everything Lexie Brown predicted. And that script flipping didn't stop with just words. The Indiana Fever's transformation tells the real story. Remember, when Indiana was basically a basketball ghost town that free agents avoided like the plague.
Now, we all know one main person who was saying that nobody wanted to play with the Indiana Fever, and that's basically Sheryl Swoopes. That is a major call out on Sheryl Swoopes. And also, Sheryl Swoopes shares the same podcast platform with Lexie Brown. They don't necessarily be on there at the same time, the Gills Arena podcast. But Cheryl Swoops be on there. So it's really interesting, man, that she just said that about the one saying nobody wants to play with Indiana.
Now they're the hottest ticket in the WNBA, and suddenly everyone wants it on what the Indiana Fever are building with Clark. Before Caitlin Clark stepped foot in Indianapolis, you could hear echoes. During Fever games, the stand sat mostly empty, the energy was non-existent, and the franchise had become an afterthought in the league. It wasn't just fans staying away. It was players. 2 free agents would literally cross Indiana off their list before negotiations even started. The team that once shined during the Tama Catchings era had fallen into basketball irrelevant.
But, and even the Mariah lady here, she wasn't really the biggest fan of Caitlin Clark also. But I think the thing that I'm seeing about the WNBA's like space is a lot of them are changing their minds about Caitlin Clark. And I get it. A lot of people are going to call them out and say, you know, hey, you weren't thinking this way the entire time. And
Enter Brown's bold prediction that flew in the face of all those nobody wants to play with Clark takes. She didn't just suggest Clark might help. She flat out declared that the rookie would rejuvenate the entire franchise and transform Indiana into an attractive place for free agents. At the time, most people thought she was being overly optimistic. How could one rookie possibly reverse years of decline?
It's a good thing that most of these players, most of these people are changing their minds and starting to have a more unbiased view on the whole WNBA, and especially Caitlin Clark. She's a special piece to the WNBA, whether they like it or not.
Let's look at what's happened since Clark's arrival. The Fever went from averaging embarrassingly low attendance numbers to selling out arenas not just at home, but on the road too. They've shattered viewership records game after game. The team that couldn't give tickets away now has people fighting for seats. And this wasn't some slow build over multiple seasons. Has happened in a matter of months.
No. I was saying people should go. People should go to the Fever. My logic was always the players should go to the Fever. I'm like, all you have is either hit open shots or run, and Caitlin Clark will get you 10 points a game. You have to do one of those two things. And if you do both, Caitlin Clark will get you 15 points a game. You don't even have to be good. You don't even have to have the skill. You don't even have to be able to dribble.
The most telling evidence is how quickly the free agent narrative has flipped. Players who wouldn't even take calls from Indiana's front office are now reportedly reaching out themselves. The same athletes who used to view a trade to the Fever as a career death sentence are suddenly seeing it as a golden opportunity. Clark's gravity isn't just pulling in fans, it's pulling in talent too.
You know, they weren't traded. Cunningham was traded there, but Natasha Howard signed with the Indiana Fever. And I think more importantly, Dewana Bonner signing with the Indiana Fever was representative of that.
What makes this turnaround even more remarkable is the speed most rebuilding franchises take years to change their reputation. The Fever did it in a single season, and the turnaround has been so dramatic that many of Clark's critics are now desperately backpedaling, trying to act like they never doubted her impact in the first place. You've probably noticed how some of those same voices that were spreading that nobody wants to play with her narrative are suddenly quiet, or worse, pretending they were supporters all along.
Yeah, it is. It's good to see someone like Lexie Brown talking about it. Like, it's good to see Lexie Brown actually go and be the one player defending it, because there's no narratives here. There's no like, oh, I need to push this. What about these other players? She's straight up saying it, being like, well, Indiana now have a huge fan base behind them. They can fill out the place. Everyone, why wouldn't every single player want to play with Caitlin Clark? Which is a fact.
The only person who doesn't seem shocked by any of this, Lexie Brown, while everyone else was underestimating Clark's impact or flat out denying it would happen, Brown saw it coming. Her prediction was just right. It was almost understated compared to what's actually happened to Fever, having just become a slightly more appealing destination. They become one of the league's crown jewels practically overnight.
The only players I could see not wanting to play with Caitlin Clark right now is probably A'ja Wilson, because A'ja Wilson would rather burn down the league and be on top of the ashes than have the league grow into a skyscraper and not have the penthouse suite, but be on the second top suite. Have the second best room in the entire hotel. She would rather burn the whole thing to the ground as long as she is on top of the rubble.
What Lexie Brown did goes beyond just standing up for Caitlin Clark. She ripped the mask off an entire ecosystem of WNBA insiders who built their platform on being dead wrong. Think about this. When the last time you saw someone in professional sports admit they were completely wrong and then defend the very person they criticize, it just doesn't happen.
I think it's okay to have your opinions and change your mind about things. And in order to see change, people have to change their minds, right? So I don't think it's a problem that women kind of misspoke at the beginning, but as long as they come around to understanding the bigger picture, understanding, spewing hate and lies, it's just unnecessary and it hurts the league. It hurts the integrity of the league.
The real question hanging over the NBA now isn't about Clark's impact. That debate is over and about who else will have the integrity to follow Brown's lead and admit they misjudged the situation. Will Cheryl Swoop step up with the other veterans who push that nobody wants to play with her narrative come clean? In 20 years, basketball fans will remember two things: how Caitlin Clark transformed the league and how Lexie Brown was the one voice who chose truth over politics when everyone else was busy protecting their reputation. That's real courage.